David, welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for having me, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Oh, glad I was able to work out. Glad to be able I know you're got a ton of things going on. We'll get into all these new exploits that you have, these new projects, but appreciate you taking a couple minutes and chatting with me.
Sure.
Cool. All right, so kind of take a step back. So you've got a pretty incredible backstory. Certainly as it relates to this industry. And I think hard pressed to find very many people that don't know, at least some of your origin story, right? But I guess let's take a step back and where you're from, what were you like as a child? You got an older brother, right? What was that like sibling rivalry like back in the day? Bring us back to the
Yeah,
early days.
and actually, to the point that most people probably know my brother Arnie more than me, just because he was always main stage CEO of ConnectWise, and I was the COO, CFO of ConnectWise. But we grew up. Dad worked for IBM, so we all were born up in Albany, New York, which is kind of funny because that's the headquarters of Autotask. But we were all born there. Dad worked for IBM. If you've ever had a family member that works for IBM, or at least back in the day, you moved every 3 years. And so we did that. Dad would get a promotion and we'd be in New Jersey. And then we were down in New York City. And then we were down in New Orleans. And then that's how we actually ended up in Tampa, was we just kept following his promotions through, the hierarchy of IBM and kept moving along as we did. So in some ways that was really important for us. By the way, Arnie and I always shared a room too, because we had four kids. And so, no one could afford to get, a 6-bedroom house. So, we all had to, share bedrooms together. So Arnie and I shared bedrooms together until he went off to college.
Wow.
Which is interesting, to actually run a business with someone that, was kind of your lifelong sibling. Arnie, we're about 2.5 years apart. Arnie's older. But then really from there, Dad, IBM, so we were always talking technology at the dinner table. We kind of heard instinctively what he was doing, why he was doing it, and all his successes and tribulations. He struggled on some things, and we got to kind of be part of that. What happened when a customer was mad at IBM or something like that, and he had to deal with it. So I think in many ways we kind of got a really, really a baptism by fire on the whole technology industry. Arnie and I both went off to University of Florida when we got down here in Tampa. We're in the same fraternity together. So, it was kind of one of those things where we both officers in the fraternity, kind of running the fraternity. I always tell the story where I was the treasurer. So CFO treasurer, right? And, I was the guy that was always making sure we weren't overspending. It's funny is if you go talk to Adam Sletskin, my partner in CyberFOX, is he would tell you the same thing. He's kind of like, Dave's the guy that holds the budget strings and gives the green lights or red lights, which can be very, very frustrating for some folks. But the point being is, when we grew up, Arnie and I, same fraternity, came out. It was really like 1981-ish. IBM PC had just hit the market. Dad was working for IBM, so we actually kind of, one of our claims to fame is we had one of the very first IBM PCs in Tampa Bay. Okay. Wow. And, both Arnie and I are CPAs. So we were kind of doing a lot of spreadsheet work. Arnie's also an MBA. And so we were just doing a lot of Lotus 1, 2, 3 and showing people how to use it. And, that kind of started our whole MSP practice, which we still own today, 41 years old. Wow. And so that was really the impetus of, us kind of building, our MSP practice, which we didn't call it MSP back then. It was called a IT service provider or ISP or whatever we call it. We just, there are all different types of names, a VAR, value-added reseller. And then we had the good fortune of having tech data in our backyard as well. And so we were able to kind of run over and grab products from tech data. If we sold something, we could install it the next day by running over and buying parts of tech data and putting together and installing it the next day. So that's kind of part of my upbringing as far as, the whole industry, really starting out before the network was even there. It was just really just put a PC on a desktop, put spreadsheet on there, put a word processor on there, put a dot matrix printer next to it. And that was the beginning, and then Novell Networks kind of came out. Really, we thought IBM Networks were going to win because we were IBM kind of from the beginning with Dad.
Sure.
And we installed a couple IBM networks, and we ended up having a bunch of arrows in our back, because it didn't work. A lot of these networks just didn't work. If you held them just right and turned the screw just right, it would work. But
Right.
finally, Novell came out, and that was really the what we call the year of the network. I think it was probably 1986 where it really started taking off. And then that really kind of the proliferation of a PC on every single desktop, every single desk in someone's office, PCs everywhere. And so we really we had the good fortune of being there in the beginning of the industry really, and sticking a desktop on, so many businesses throughout the Tampa Bay area. So that was really our claim to fame. Interesting story on how we started managed services. We were probably earlier than everyone else because Tampa, the word Tampa is actually a Caluso Indian word meaning place of lightning. And so we are considered probably the lightning capital of the world. We have more strikes of lightning per year than any other place on earth. And back then we put these networks together and these big copper cables, and we run these very, very long parallel cables throughout the office to connect the printer back to the server motherboard, because that's how you did it off a parallel cable or parallel port. And if a lightning bolt hit within a mile of an office, there was not enough ground in any of the buildings to take care of that half volt that you would catch onto your network and blow out the server motherboard, blow out network cards everywhere. So really, we would have 5, 6, 7 customers a summer get blown out and we'd walk in, their equipment was frying. Okay. It was actually, you could smell the smoke. And so we started saying, okay, we learned how to ground buildings really well. We had an electrician that was helping us. And we would say, okay, we'll cover all things, all acts of God, everything. We'll get your server back up, everything running in 4 hours. Okay. And now we're going to charge you, a couple $100 a month. And so within a 2-year period, we were about $100,000 a month in recurring revenue. The day we walked in the door on the beginning of the month, all bills were paid because we had this recurring revenue stream. And that was kind of the impetus of why we started writing ConnectWise. So we wrote ConnectWise to really kind of take care of this incredible revenue stream we were kind of building month after month. And, being able to track all the parts, the pieces, the manufacturer warranties, everything like that would be really the reason we didn't ever consider reselling ConnectWise managed software. It kind of just came out of something we built to run our own MSP. So that's kind of the genesis story of it all.
That is fascinating. I mean, there's so many different directions to go to, but that's something I hear quite often. You've seen it time and time again. A lot of the MSPs that they come up against a use case, or they're solving for a problem and they need to solve it, to operationalize something within their business, or it's something that's repetitive, a recurring challenge, and then they go out and write a program, and then next thing you know, they're spinning up a software company, and they've got 2 paths of revenue at that point. But it's fascinating, kind of understanding the real origin story of kind of that subscription model, tracing it back to the fact that Tampa is the lightning capital of the world. That's incredible. Yeah. How about
it was.
that?
I don't know if that happens if we're living in Atlanta.
Wow.
So, you does that same phenomena happen? It was just something we kind of figured out that all the other MSPs or IT companies were running away from it. It's like, because forevermore you're taking care of all this faulty equipment that got hit by lightning, so you're ever, replacing everything, and your margin goes away real quick if you're just replacing hardware all the time. So that was just kind of something we kind of, we were very diligent. Arnie and I, hard workers, we had no problem working 80 hours a week. And so, and I think that's kind of how we started out. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so many different threads to pull on. Get kind of into in the sibling. You know, I don't know if there's ever rivalry, but let's get on this Tampa thread for a second, because that's one of the things that's always amazed me about, you know, that the Tampa area is just the amount of technology that has come out of Tampa over, especially over the last decade. And maybe a lot of it's attributed to the fact that you guys grew so well, and then, you know, there were so many different offshoots of what you guys had generated. But even going back further, I mean, I remember working with groups like Sunview Software and Numara with their footprints and, you know, tracking
It's a
products. Yeah.
Yeah, and those companies spawned up before we did, really, in many ways. And I think, you know, look, Florida is a great economic, place to grow a business. You know, you can pay someone reasonable salary, they can go buy a house still. So it's like you can kind of live your American dream still down here in Florida. Whereas I think some big cities up in the Northeast and in California have just gotten probably a little too expensive to, you know, pay someone. You got to pay them really quite an exorbitant salary for them to afford a house. And so I think we had a great economic environment to grow a business successfully, you know. So I think that we got lucky there. And I think that's why Numara, Sunview, and those guys spawned in the same places, because, you know, we have some big universities here, University of South Florida, University of Tampa. There's a lot of quality students coming out, you know, looking for jobs. And that was, you know, kind of part of the formula, and it really worked well. So, and it's, you know, it's a great place to live. So you've got people, you know, migrating down to this area all the time as well. So it was really nice to, you know, grow an MSP practice here, but also kind of being able to collect a lot of good employees and, you know, talent to come down into the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah, I feel like it's not, you know, it should be put up there on par with some of the different areas across the country. I was down there not too long ago speaking down at the Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Tampa, and it was incredible to see how just how much has gone into that campus, and then how many just different tech companies were in and around, and kind of the tech vibe that's going on. We have that up here, and I'm in Maryland, so we've got a thriving, particularly when it comes to security, ecosystem up here, and you've got it up in, you know, Boston, and certainly out in the Silicon Valley. But it's really interesting to see how the Tampa area is just, you know, I think it's become a powerhouse of technology for the last couple of, or at least last decade. So so it seems like it served you guys well. So kind of jumping around, but like going back to when you made the transition from, you know, you've got this MSP practice, you got the recurring revenue, you're going to solve the challenge that was in front of you and your customers, and then, you know, it sounded like you kind of incubated things for a while, but then you had this kind of light bulb moment. Or what was that moment when you guys, you know, decided to spin up a software company, you know, and pivot?
You know, I think one of the things we were on the advisory council for Tech Data, and we knew Steve Raymond. He was the CEO of Tech Data at that time, and we were on the advisory council. And, you know, some people it was probably about 2 dozen MSPs, you know, that were buying from Tech Data that were on that same council. And lo and behold, we started selling them our product. They had heard about our product, you know, what we were running, you know, in our business, and we didn't really want to sell it. We're like, it's not, you know, we'll have to support it. We don't want to sell it. And then, you know, I think the light bulb came on where we said, heck, you know, there's a lot of people that need this. You know, there's no, you know, centralized system for, you know, this newer kind of company, which was, you know, I always liken an MSP practice to, you know, it's, you know, in the past you had a CPA. Everyone had a CPA firm helping them do audits and taxes and stuff like that. Everyone had a lawyer that was helping them get through some, you know, contract and legal stuff. And then the third seat at the table came available, where it was this, you know, IT consultant. It's an IT company that kind of took care of all your IT. And I think when that happened, we had to get organized, just like those other two industries, accounting and legal. We had to really organize these businesses. And so that, I think, what started happening was we became real seats at the table, where we were just as important as the lawyer for that small business, or the accountant for that small business. It was a lifetime relationship with this IT consultancy. And so that's really what we catered to. We were like, this is a brand new type of business that didn't exist 20 years before that. And, we're going to help organize them. We were great at being CPAs and understanding how to, run a business successfully. And we kind of just encoded that into the software and kind of gave it to everyone. So most of these people that were running these IT consultancies we figured out 85% of them were technologists. They're great at building a great mousetrap, to kind of support a small business, but, collecting the money, staying out of, legal liability problems, they weren't great at that, and so when we were selling, they couldn't sell. So we were able to kind of encode that into the software enough where that kind of made it, a no-brainer for them to do. It was kind of like built into the software.
Do you remember a specific moment, maybe like, we're going to need a bigger boat moment where, like you knew you're onto something and then it just started to take off and you kind of looked at each other where like,
I think was, Adam Sleskin was our, he was our CRO at ConnectWise. And that's why we've partnered up, because we know each other pretty intimately. I think it was one of these deals where I was on a vacation and he called me and he said, hey, we just sold a 500 user ConnectWise instance. And I was thinking, you do the math in your head and you think, oh gosh, it was one of those kind of moments all of a sudden where you were like, oh gosh, this is going to be a lot bigger than I thought, and that was definitely for me. And I remember just kind of sitting there going, all right, get ready. You got the tiger by the tail.
Yeah. One of the cool things, whether it's an IT Nation event, I think there was one, I think it's this past one, and it's actually been other events as well, where you talk to some of the MSPs and they it's almost like a badge of honor where they say, Arnie came out and did our implementation, right? Like they talk about like their early intimate days. I mean, they seriously, they talk about it as if it's like, they were touched by the hand of God in the IT space. But yeah, it's funny how many of those conversations I've had where people kind of look back and I think there's probably a sense of pride because they saw themselves growing as you were growing, right? Just kind of this whole ecosystem. But it's pretty interesting to have that kind of reaction where people were just like, I was there early days, already did my implementation, and it's just like this badge of honor almost.
Well, he did the first, get this, he did the first 300 installations.
Wow.
So he would sell it and then he'd run out over the weekend, fly up somewhere and install it over the weekend, which was, a little concerning because he was like, this is not going to bode well for his personal life necessarily because he was working 80 hours a week and he's flying all over the place.
Yeah.
But the innovative curve that happened with him doing the installation firsthand, hearing, well, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. And then he would just call back that night to our lead developer and just tell her, hey, this is what it has to do. Can you change it? And she was kind of able to, fix it and change it overnight and kind of just iterate to this really kind of fundamental, product that was kind of way ahead of everyone else. But it took a lot of hard work for Arnie, because he did fly out every weekend to kind of do an installation. And so those people got a firsthand, they knew they were, and because the first 300, I think we ended up, by the time we sold ConnectWise to Tomo Bravo, we probably had about 9,000 ConnectWise managed partners by then. Wow. And so it was, those 300 know who they were.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. Like I said, I've had that conversation time and time again. It's great. It's a testament to, I guess, what you guys had built and just kind of the loyalty, that you guys that generated across the industry. So you mentioned you guys kind of got to a point. What was that? 2017, 2018. With
the sale of ConnectWise was 2019.
Yeah. 19. Okay. Wow. 19.
2019. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know. All my dates are messed up because of the COVID debacle. But
the lost years.
The lost years. Yeah. So what was that? what was that process like? I mean, because you know, I've
Uh,
talked
yeah,
to, good.
yeah, I think, yeah, look, it was, first of all, it takes a half a year. It takes months and months and months for that stuff to kind of go through due diligence and all that. And we were new to it because we had never taken on any private equity money, so we weren't really familiar with any of that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we had gotten to the point where I think we were like 1,200 employees at the time, so it
Mm-hmm.
was a little bigger than we thought we would be.
Sure.
Um, and it seemed like the right decision at the time, but it took a long time to get done. There's a lot of due diligence in the process. They come back, stock market crashes, like
Mm-hmm.
late 2018. They come back, they want to give you a haircut on price. So, and I think you've experienced this with your own products that you've sold in the past. It's a long, arduous path, right? And it feels like sometimes you'll never get through it.
Right. Yeah, yeah, having gone through it now, I think you try to figure out how you brace yourself for the next one, just because it is, or it's almost like you get mentally and physically prepared for the long slug and kind of negotiation processes. But I think what was interesting at the time, right? I think you mentioned it, right. There's right. Take a step back. I always talk about this concept of the maturity curve in this industry, right? How it's really now at a point where the industry's matured. Wall Street is looking at the industry, but you guys legitimized it, right? You guys were the first big major transaction that legitimized this industry and turned all the heads and said, to a lot of
Yeah.
the VCs and Wall Street, like you have to look at this industry.
And I generally believe in what private equity is doing. I think, it's the flow of funds to wherever in the world it needs to go to create the most productivity or the most, good things that can happen. So I think I'm glad that they're looking at our side of the industry. We were never considered, you know, they were always kind of laugh at the MSPs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Microsoft, probably the MSP channel probably makes up, I don't know, maybe 10%. I might be wrong on that figure, but back last time I looked, it was like maybe 10, 12% of their total revenues. So it's not a large amount, but I think it's a large enough amount where everyone's starting to say, well, no, and it's growing. It certainly is growing. And sorry, I have Adam Slutskin calling me, so it's showing up on my screen. So it's growing. And I think that because of that, you're starting to see a lot more people use MSPs, even in the mid-market level.
Yeah.
I grew the ConnectWise office in London, and over there in London, I saw, there were MSPs that were, doing the entire help desk for Jaguar Motors. So you're starting to see them kind of penetrate into larger and larger companies. Matter of fact, my MSP, we just signed a deal with Hyundai. So we are, as a group, MSPs moving into bigger, more important customers. And I shouldn't say it that way, because I think small businesses are the lifeblood of the United States economy. More people are employed by small, medium-sized businesses than they are Fortune 500. So, but we're growing, and I think as that's happened, you're starting to see a lot of this. These investment funds recognize that these are good places where you could invest money and create a lot of goodness. If a company is solving a problem, it's not a bad thing to give it more money to see if it can solve more problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go through that experience, have the big exit, and then we were chatting before we went on about the fact that you took a couple years off and got antsy, and said I got to do something again. I had similar experience, although I didn't make it quite that long. I think I was about, but you've teamed back up with a partner in crime, Mr. Slutskin there, and
I
got
did.
this new venture going on. So I guess tell
Yeah,
us about
yeah. I
CyberFOX.
think, and to be fair, yeah, I was retired, and struggling a little bit in the sense that it was kind of getting boring. at some point you need some type of intellectual challenge. I find that you had mentioned you had to do the same thing. You can only go to the gym so many times. You can only, fine. I was waking up at 7:30 still instead of 6:30, but it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I'm ready. And Adam kind of pulled me back in. He kind of said, oh, look, here's a company that needs our help. Here's a company that needs our help. We could run the management on them and see if we could make something of it. And knowing the industry, it was kind of easy for us to kind of find some really good security tools that are needed, that are 100% needed by small, medium-sized business. So that's kind of how we got back in it. Adam kind of dragged myself back into it. So it's been fun, though. We're having a great run. We're solving a lot of problems, and so that's kind of what the exciting part is. It's funny when you talk about security. I'll tell the story where back in, I think it was like 1992. I remember we were, people have said, you got to put antivirus on a workstation. And so I remember having McAfee antivirus, and I remember thinking, oh God, I don't want to put McAfee on all these machines. These workstations are like 3 or 4 years old. It will crash them. And so back then it was like 1992. We were just getting everyone on the internet. There were really no hackers out there. So it was kind of like, I don't want to put this antivirus on this computer. It's going to ruin it. It's going to slow it down. It's too big of a footprint. It's going to take up too much memory, and it's going to cause it to slow down. I'm going to get complaints. So there were a lot of times we were like, no, I'll only put it on brand new workstations. So I just remember, and if you think about it now in this day and age, if you don't put antivirus on a workstation or a laptop, within 15 minutes of it being exposed to the internet, it's completely foobarbed, it's completely hosed and infected. So it's just one of those progressive things where each and every year, this productivity of the internet has been fantastic. I mean, it's just been such a big productivity gain for America, mostly, everyone else as well. But, it was, the epicenter was here in the United States. And so we really got such a great productivity gain with the internet and with all this technology and Moore's law, where everything was tripling or doubling in speed every 18 months.
Yeah.
So now we're kind of having to pay back a little bit where we got all that gains. And, now, unfortunately, there's bad guys out there. They go the dark web and, some of the sinister part of the internet, which is they figured out how to make money. This is capitalism gone bad. Why are they doing these? What's going on with the breach? Well, it's ransomware mostly. I mean, they're making, you can buy a little, hacker toolkit on the dark web, and you can start a little cottage industry in your basement, breaching people's systems and holding them ransom. And so that's really what's happened here. And so now it's our job, we as CyberFOX is, let's build, tools that cover 90% of what the big expensive tools are for Fortune 500 at 1/10 the price. If that's, that's probably our mantra more than anything is, hey, let's build these tools that are not crazy expensive, that, a small, medium-sized business and the MSPs that service those businesses can do without having to, I own an MSP. I can't go to my local CPA firm that I'm supporting and say, hey, I need an additional $3,000 a month to take care of all your security. They're not going to do it.
Right.
They're just not. They're a 20-person firm. They'll probably give me, $500 a month, $600 a month to do that. And then I can convince them, hey, make sure you get cybersecurity on your errors and omissions insurance. And then we're kind of covering them, and we're definitely making sure they're not going to have some type of, event that causes their business to close. And that's really what we're trying to protect against, is those catastrophic problems that can happen with a breach. Every day you're reading about someone's gotten breached. I saw one where it was, I think it was some healthcare. It just got breached, 6 million names, social security numbers, all those type of things. So we are just trying to protect the small, medium-sized business. That's really our mantra, with products that are just not that expensive. Because as an MSP owner myself, I mean, I cannot go in good faith to the small businesses that we're supporting and ask them for $3,000 a month. They'll say, no, I can't afford that. So what can you do? What else can you do?
No. Yeah, I'm having visions of Adam calling you every 15 minutes saying, "Hey, I got an idea. Hey, I got an idea. Come on, David. Come on, David. Come on, David."
Well,
Uh,
that never stops, by the way.
yeah,
Look, it's part of the recipe of success, though, too. I mean, I've never
absolutely,
seen a more hardworking person
absolutely.
that just works all day and all night.
Yeah. So you guys are moving exceptionally fast. I think the market's responding really well to the message and the depth and the breadth that you guys, solutions that you guys are pulling together. And then uh, recently, I think it was it last Monday, you mentioned was it last Monday, last week sometime, you mentioned you had a
Yes,
new addition to the team.
yes. We just hired Wes Spencer. Okay, and Wes Spencer is, I think a lot of people in your audience probably know who Wes Spencer is.
Mhm.
For us, he really kind of completes us in the sense that, he brings all that. If you go look at his resume on LinkedIn, he's just got, he was a CISO at a bank, it's kind of, where he came from. That was 10 years ago. So he has been steeped in the whole security part of the business for probably 20 years now.
Yeah.
And so I think really, really helps us, and it rounds us out and gives us that, the credentials to kind of, he's going to help us in our development, our development cycles on what we should be, heading towards. He helps us certainly, being able to go out there and explain security in a simple way to, the MSPs and those and their small business customers. So it really has been a very impactful. We're very excited. Wes is really excited. So
Mhm.
um, looking for great things in the future.
Yeah, no, it's again, maturity curve in this industry. I mean, what Wes has done to bring awareness, and working with, folks like Andrew Morgan on the cyber call, and just the knowledge that he brings to the industry, it's been great. There's a handful of individuals, Matt Lee out there, some others that have done a great job of bringing cybersecurity awareness to the industry, and it's maturing, and it definitely, Wes has led the charge with that. So congratulations on that pickup.
Yeah, you know what he does? He really simplifies the equation.
Yeah.
Look, I've been a business owner for over 40 years now. And when you go to look, it's like, well, what should I do? I mean, there's 25 different security things that are out there. Do I do them all? I can't afford to do them all. I don't have the bandwidth of, employees to help me install them all and maintain them all. So
Yeah.
I think that, Wes is really able to kind of boil it down to the basics, and some of those basics that we're hearing, from the FBI is, just, least privilege,
Mhm.
good, multi-factor password, and really some type of, phishing, anti-phishing type of software that can help, make sure that people, we look at it and we recognize the biggest vulnerability for a business is really, us, the humans that are between, the keyboard at the
Mhm.
keyboard. We're the most vulnerable entry point. Okay, because we get fooled. We leave our computers open. We now with with COVID, 25% of the people are never coming back to the office, so they're working remotely, creating even more of a larger digital landscape that it can be encroached. So really that's what we're trying to do is simplify the equation, make it easy, cover that 90% of what they need to be covered, and then really help people get some type of cyber insurance to cover that last 10%.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, you guys are moving fast. Seeing out all the events, and guys are creating quite a stir out there. What's next couple of years look like for you guys? What's next?
Well, we have some new products. So first of all, we're solving a lot of easy. Our main goal is to make things just really easy
Mhm.
installations. I think some of these security products, certainly the larger ones like a CyberArk or a Beyond Trust, you know, they're great tools, but you have to hire a person to run them.
Mhm.
Okay, again, that's just not feasible for a small, medium-sized business. So we're trying to make tools that are just really, really simple to use, so they don't have to have a lot of maintenance. A human kind of having his finger in the dike. So our goal is to continue innovating on that same theme, where we're going to have a phishing product. Okay, we're going to have a DNS filter. Okay, we're going to do a block listing in addition to auto elevate. So we have a lot of things that we're going to bring forward as time goes on over the next 5 years, and so that's kind of our goal, is to keep on building that simplicity that's needed. I mean, because the SMB market is under protected. Okay, they're just underserviced. There's not enough out there for them. Okay, and then we have to make it simple.
Yeah. Well, again, it sounds like from what I see out on in-person events and online, it sounds like the market's responding exceptionally well to what you guys are doing. So you must be doing something right. Well, look, I know you've got a busy day. You probably have Adam calling you there, blowing you up.
But I have one last thing I want to talk a little about, if you don't mind. I mean, I think it's an interesting topic that I listen to a lot of podcasts on. It's the whole artificial intelligence. It's like, what does that mean for security? Well, I think it's like anything. It's a double-edged sword. The good guys are going to use it so that we can kind of plug the holes on security, but the bad guys are too. So it's just going to kind of ratchet up the need to protect yourself even more and more and more. I think that, we look at this whole, I do think that artificial intelligence can create, a massive productivity boost, that hopefully, gets the United States out of this massive debt bubble that we have, and I think that will happen just like the internet allowed us to do that as well. And I think that, but I do think that, there has to be some type of regulation of artificial intelligence, some type of framework for monitoring it. Yeah. Because I do think if you ever listen to Elon Musk, you start listening to him, obviously a pretty smart guy. He's concerned, he's concerned that AGI, some type of artificial general intelligence kicks in that, is not necessarily controllable, it starts taking over. I don't want to be dystopic or anything, but when you hear Elon Musk saying we should have a power switch on this stuff so we can at least turn it off if we ever need to, I thought that was interesting. But I think that it's going to be an incredible opportunity for all of us. And I think it's going to just create, just like the internet did, it's going to create a lot of productivity boost, but it's also going to create, some safeguards we're going to have to put in its place.
Now, look, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're just watching, the congressional testimony, the Senate, or was it congressional hearing where Sam Altman's, up there talking about, he's encouraging Congress to put regulations, forth for artificial intelligence, AGI, because the genie is out of the bottle, and who knows where this thing goes. But as you mentioned,
well, what happens when it's in the wild, right?
It's in the wild, and just like on Tor, the dark web, those originally started with good intentions by the U.S. Navy and military, and now look what you can do out on the dark web, right? So
I've listened to Sam on that topic. He's trying to encourage everyone to do something like the International Atomic Energy Agency, some type of monitoring system, just like we did with nuclear. It's like nuclear is great. It creates all this inexpensive energy to power the world, but it's also very, very dangerous. Chernobyl, and of course, any type of nuclear weapons. And so there has to be some type of governing body, at least that, some framework that we try to adhere to. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. I find it incredibly interesting. I think it's going to be an opportunity, though.
I was going to bring that up as a topic, but I was using my app here on my phone, and I said, write a bio for David Bellini, right? And so it started to go down this path. But what I noticed is that it started with past tense. It said David Bellini was an Italian software engineer and entrepreneur. And then it actually, it said David passed away on December 15th, 2018.
Yes.
You can't make this stuff up, right? So I was going to go down this path. Like, the middle, it got everything right about.
My employees here have done that same thing. And apparently I've in some other multiverse, apparently I didn't make it, right? And so there was a David Bellini filmmaker in Italy that recently passed away, I think in 2018. I think it's kind of, that's the problem with AI is it does hallucinate a bit,
Yeah.
That's what they actually call it, hallucinations. It kind of comes up. And I think if you read that, it actually has some type of foundation in my name. And I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of, I got to be honest with you. When I read that the first day, it upset me for about 24 hours.
I bet. Yeah. I bet. Yeah. I was like,
And
Man, do we fast forward and are we now in this AGI thing? Are you real? Is this thing real?
well, the other part of it is think of it, if the government wants to use it because it's efficient and they don't have to hire all these employees and we got budget constraints. And so it lets the AI take over. And the AI says to me, it says, well, yeah, no, you don't want, we're taking away your social security number because you don't exist anymore. It's like, wait, I do exist. So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
crazy. But yeah, that's it. I was gonna go down. I was gonna get on this, this artificial path. Then I read that. I was like, I'm not gonna bring that up. But anyway, so look,
Well,
you've been
I've seen
very
it.
gracious with your time. And so I guess best place to find you guys.
Well, we're, of course, cyberfox.com, that's our website. So, and then, we're at a lot of the trade shows, but yeah, anyone can find us there. We've got, we got demos and trials up on our website. We're out on LinkedIn, we're at all the social media places. So, and then of course, broadcasts like this.
That's right. That's right. We're doing our part to spread the word. So, but with that, I really appreciate you taking some time. I know you're busy.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Got to get back to Adam and
I will call
and
him right
crew.
now.
So, all right. Thanks, David.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.